Prem Watsa came to Canada with $8 in his pocket. The company he eventually founded is now a pillar of the Canadian business world. It's not exactly a household name, but you definitely know some of what it owns.
Earl's and the Keg and East Side Mario's, they've got a whole series of restaurants in one group. They've got other companies that people recognize, like Golf Town and Sporting Life on the retail side.
Fairfax Financial owns all that stuff. Who knew? Hi, I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Not much flies under the radar these days, but Prem Watsa and Fairfax Financial, they sure do. Watsa's been called a cross between Warren Buffett and Howard Hughes. Later in the show, we talk to the author of a new book about Canada's quietest billionaire. And if you don't get how 12 rolls can equal 24, you're not alone. We pry into the ultra-soft world of toilet paper math. Up first, what's your favorite critical mineral? Antimony? Vanadium? How about manganese? Hey, they're all nice, but can they do anything for the economy? You know what critical minerals have going for them? Good branding. They're critical. Rare earth metals are rare. And Canada is sitting on a ton of this stuff. So, can I get some happy music? Prime Minister Mark Carney thinks critical minerals could mean
enormous opportunity for Canada. Enormous opportunity for Canada because the world wakes up and realizes not to have all their eggs in one basket.
We hear about that enormous opportunity all the time. Canada has what the world needs. That's the story. Copper, nickel, aluminum. We got your bismuth and your fluorspar. Rare earth metals, which are often lumped in with critical minerals, we have those too. Cerium, neodymium.
There's antimony, arsenic, aluminum, selenium, and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen and rhenium, and nickel, neodymium, neptunium, germanium, and iron, americium, ruthenium, uranium, europium, zirconium, lutetium, vanadium, and lanthanum, and osmium, and astatine, and radium, and gold.
And Ottawa likes the idea of Canada becoming a critical minerals superpower. The budget just included $2 billion for a fund to get more projects off the ground. And critical minerals could boost the economy, give us clout with the U.S. It's a comforting thought that we could have an ace in the hole. But are critical minerals really an ace? Ian Lange is a resource economist at the Colorado School of Mines. He's looked at the economic potential of critical minerals for countries around the world. And he's not so sure.
My favorite statistic is basically like the sum of every mineral market in the world is about half the value of the oil market in the world. And that's every mineral market, right? And if we're talking about critical minerals and rare earths, those are really small.
How small? Well, if it's the critical minerals needed for the high-tech stuff of the future, batteries, magnets, silicon chips, it's pretty small. Like if we're talking indium or germanium.
If you can somehow get a way to produce it, someone will buy it. Will you become, the Saudi Arabia of North America? No, you will not.
Ian says the amount of critical minerals needed to make stuff is often tiny. Like, yes, electric vehicles use rare earths, but it's only 1 or 2 grams per car. Or take something like gallium. A bit of it goes into semiconductors. So, yeah, it's critical. But how much money would it take to supply the U.S. with all of its gallium needs?
Most guesses 20 million, right? Like, is probably what you need to spend to get about U.S. consumption. And so I like to argue, right? Like the Pentagon probably spends like 2 hours spending $20 million processing travel receipts. So why are we talking about this? Like we're market economies. We produce valuable things. they're not produced because they're basically not they're not valuable.
If there was a business case for producing gallium, Ian says someone would do it. For $20 million,
you could get, say, Teck in the Trail smelter in British Columbia to turn on and produce a decent amount of gallium for that amount. They've got all the machinery ready to go. They've done it in the past. It's just nobody's asking them for it. So they're like, why would I do it if no one wants it? I feel like some of this is like teenagers and sex. We talk about it a lot more than we do it.
Okay, yeah, we do talk about critical minerals a lot. Maybe not teenager amounts, but a lot. So is it more hype than substance? Well, maybe if economics were the whole story. But critical minerals have been called the foundation on which modern technology is built. That gives them strategic value and a currency that goes beyond dollars and cents.
I'm in the trenches of developing critical minerals projects, and there is a huge opportunity for Canada.
Chris Dornbos runs an early-stage critical minerals company called E3 Lithium. Now, he hears what Ian Lange is saying about the size of the market and agrees critical minerals will never be as big as, say, oil. But he still sees something large brewing for this country. And the reason? China. Yeah, everything seems to come back to China. Now look at critical minerals. It's the global kingpin. It processes 90% of the world's rare earth supply. Now, processing critical minerals can be a messy business, and often not a moneymaker. So other countries have been happy to let China do it. But now that means it kind of has the rest of the world over a barrel.
There's continual threats of not getting access to the materials that we need for our own uses, whether they're military or just domestic uses. And that risk has become too great now because the quantity and percentage of the materials coming from one place is so large now that the world has become so dependent on it.
China doesn't take a free market approach to critical minerals. If it's making electric cars and needs lithium, it makes a bunch of it and sells some to the rest of the world for cheap. If it loses money on the lithium, it more than makes that up on the value of the cars. And it keeps a stranglehold on the lithium market. But now other countries want to break that grip. The G7 wants to cut down its reliance on China. Ottawa is calling critical minerals a national security priority. It wants to stockpile them and give companies price guarantees. So if they build a project, they'll be able to make money on what they produce. But even then, muscling out China won't be easy. And it won't happen fast.
It takes average of 10 years to build a project. It takes an average of 20 years from discovery to build a project, and 98% fail. So when you have those kind of stats in the mining industry, you can't just say, oh, crap, China's blocked this. We need to go build a mineral project now. You're 10 years away.
A bunch of Canadian projects are already in the works. And Chris thinks customers will line up for any new critical mineral supply that ends up coming from Canada.
We need more of everything. We need more minerals for magnets. We need more lithium for batteries. We need more copper for wire. We need more nickel for batteries. We need, all of those things are needed to build this electrical economy that we're moving towards, slowly but surely moving towards. So let's build in Canada.
In a world where the great global powers are getting ornery with each other, getting critical minerals from dependable old Canada could look pretty good.
There's a great quote that says it takes 1,000 parts to, build a car, but one missing parts and you have no car. Critical minerals, this is what they represent. While the market is small, the political importance and the strategy behind it on the global stage is very high. This is high stake.
Marc-Antoine Dumont is an economist at Desjardins, a financial services company based in Quebec. He thinks Canada can become indispensable to global supply chains. But we also have competition. Russia, Australia, Brazil, pretty much all the big resource countries, they all have their own critical minerals. And the race is on to see who becomes a player and who stays on the sidelines. So what to make of critical minerals? Are they an enormous opportunity, or will they fall short of the hype? Marc Antoine says the economic reality probably falls somewhere in the middle.
We're overconfident with critical mineral, and that was the marketing. It was presented as a savior for, remote regions and small towns and something that will boost the Canadian economy. The reality is that it's a lot smaller than we thought. The market is smaller, but there's demand. We know that the energy transition is still happening, and batteries and all those green technologies are still, demand is still expecting to rise over the next decades.
Canada's mining sector, including stuff like gold, makes up about 6% of the economy. Critical minerals are a smaller slice of that. Even if that doubles or triples in size, that wouldn't move the needle that much for the economy as a whole. But Marc Antoine says it's also still nothing to sneeze at. We have potential critical minerals projects across the country, some in remote places without a lot of other economic opportunities. A new project here, another one there. He says that can add up.
If you look at one industry in just one province, it's not going to be as impactful if you look at the whole mining industry across Canada. Quebec has iron ore, Ontario has copper, we have gold in Quebec, BC has nickel and copper as well. Every province has their minerals and their reserves in the ground.
So critical minerals could be a nice shot in the arm for the economy, even if they're not quite as critical as advertised. On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. So you're at the grocery store. You're bumping along, checking off all the stuff on your list, milk, bread, easy peasy. Until 18 equals 72? No. 18 equals 18. Unless it's jumbo-sized or a mega roll. Hey, can we get a glossary in aisle 12? If you find toilet paper math to be a pain in the algebra, Liz Withey says you're not alone.
Lindsay Wakeling is careful with her money. She's an education assistant who lives in Calgary. Lindsay knows when something's a good deal, except when it comes to toilet paper. There's so much to think about. Sheet size, sheets per roll, rolls per package. Did you like math when you were going to school?
No, hate it, and I still do.
And toilet paper math isn't like regular math. I mean, how do 12 rolls equal 24 rolls?
It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to anybody because you're not getting twice the amount.
Kate Musgrove says this kind of thing is deliberate. She's a marketing consultant who specializes in consumer information. And she says it's not just the math that makes the prices confusing. It's the jargon.
For us, mega roll equals mega value. Cha-ching!
The word mega roll gets used a lot, and mega roll is not, a defined thing. A mega roll is this amorphous, hard to pin down concept that seems to be everywhere.
And then there's this business about 12 equals 24.
That literally doesn't make sense, but it's something that every package of toilet paper has on it. And it's very hard to get to the bottom of that.
Unlike most things at the grocery store, toilet paper doesn't have a set unit price. With other products, it might be the price for 100 grams or 100 milligrams. Instead,
invariably, when it comes to toilet paper, they're telling you the cost per roll, which is useless because no one has, a defined, accepted, universal term for what a roll is.
When it comes to paper products, no two units are quite the same. There's pattern, perfume, ply. It's tough to measure and compare. But what if we could beat them at their own game? Albert Wiersch works in IT, and a few years ago, he was pretty active on a website where bargain hunters would swap intel. Toilet paper came up a lot.
People would want to compare the toilet paper prices, and a lot of them would ask if it's a good deal or not.
Albert decided to tackle the problem by creating an online calculator. The Toilet Paper Value Calculator Pro.
You enter the number of rolls, the sheets per roll, the full price, and it'll calculate the cost per sheet.
Okay, let's give it a whirl. If we take a package of 30 double rolls on sale for $22.99, each roll has 142 sheets. Plug all that into the Toilet Paper Value Calculator Pro, and it costs about half a cent per sheet. Albert's calculator also spits out a grade. It compares the price to what's considered a good value. This one gets an F. Lindsay Wakeling had never heard of toilet paper calculators. There are a few. Would she consider using one?
I honestly probably would, just to see what is the best bang for my buck.
And until then,
I make my husband get the toilet paper.
For the Cost of Living, I'm Elizabeth Withey.
This is The Cost of Living, where we get to the bottom of things. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. A bunch of Canada's richest people, we hear their names all the time. We eat French fries from McCain's, get cell phone bills from Rogers. Irving gas stations are all over the Maritimes. Hey, there's Galen Weston in a Christmas sweater pitching Loblaws. Now what if I say Prem Watsa? He's worth billions. His company, Fairfax Financial, is a stock market darling, but neither is a household name. So how did Prem Watsa become, as he was once called, the richest, savviest guy you've never heard of? David Thomas is the author of a new book, The Fairfax Way, Inside Prem Watsa's Secret to Lasting Success. He's also a former editor of mine. We worked together at a newspaper. David Thomas, it has been a minute. How are you?
I am great, Paul. Good to be here.
You know, Prem, he came to Canada from India in 1972. He had $8 in his pocket. Now he's worth north of $2 billion. Is there a story from back then, his early days when he arrived, that can help explain how he went from rags to riches?
It is, yeah, there is. It's actually a really fun part as a way to start the book. Here's a guy whose family, if you go all the way back to the 1850s, converted to Christianity. So they were a little bit contrarian to begin with. He later became a major contrarian as an investor in how he bought companies. But he came from a different background. His father was an orphan who was a school teacher and administrator. And through that, the family didn't have a lot of money. They weren't dirt poor by any stretch, but they wouldn't have had the opportunity to go to these great schools. But his father was running them, so Prem got a really good education. And how he ended up coming to Canada was his brother and his wife moved to London, Ontario, from India. And Prem's father told Prem, there's too much socialism. They didn't think with the 5-year planning programs in India at the time that it was a very constructive place to be. So he said, you know what, go to the West, go live with your brother, and we'll see where it goes. He had done an engineering degree in India. He moved to London, Ontario, and went to Ivey, which was a great business program. And there he discovered that he liked investing. So he really had no clue going in, didn't know what a stock was, and got really hooked on investing.
But a lot of people move to Canada. A lot of people go into business. Some win, some lose. Prem definitely won, but is there a way to isolate why? Like, if you were to say Prem Watsa made it because of this, does he have a superpower?
His superpower, and there bridges into the company's culture too, is just his personality. There's this definitiveness of purpose, which is a term that comes from a little book, sort of a pioneer of self-help called Napoleon Hill, the author, and Prem got inspired by that book. A stranger gave it to him on a train. It's a real classic moment. He was 20 years old. He had done his engineering. He knew he didn't want to be an engineer, and he learned what he saw as the magic of capitalism when done right. And the message in this book, Think and Grow Rich is the name of the book, is if you get capitalism right, it is the best system for progress for a society as a whole. And that you can take that money, and the best way to do capitalism is with compassion and make sure you give back. But you've got to make money in order to give it back. I think that inspired him, and he sort of carried this vision. Was when he did get a chance to set up Fairfax and go on this venture, that he said, you know what, we're going to be grounded. We're going to give back when we start making money. We're going to give back money to charity. And we're also going to treat people right. So this is where, I talked about him being a contrarian. The way they wanted to run their business and was as a holding company that did acquisitions. So they were buying all these insurance companies and other ones. And what they sort of made a ground rule where they said, you know what, we're not going to do the synergy thing. We're not going to go in and buy a company, lay off half their employees, and make the deal work by losing people. They shouldn't be paying the price. So you never lay people off. That was sort of a ground rule. His vision was attracting people, inspiring them to act in a liked way. And he called this the fair and friendly way of operating. And that was where they took the name for Fairfax, was fair. The F is for friendly, and the AX in fax is acquisitions.
Well, you mentioned Fairfax, its main business is insurance and the reinsurance business. I don't really want to get into the details of how reinsurance works, but Fairfax has its fingers in a lot of pies, a lot of different businesses. Are there companies out there that Fairfax has a piece of or owns outright that people may have heard of but have no idea that Fairfax owns them?
They have a lot of large businesses around the world that really kind of drive a lot of the bigger numbers. Eurobank in Greece is huge. They own the have a controlling ownership of the C-SPAN container ship business, really big names. But for Canadian consumers, I think a lot of people would be surprised. In the last, 20 years, they picked up a lot of companies like Earl's and the Keg and Eastside Mario's. They've got a whole series of restaurants in one group. They've got other companies that people would recognize, like Golf Town and Sporting Life on the retail side. There's all kinds of companies that I don't think people would ever recognize. They're not advertised on the TV as a Fairfax company.
If we look at Fairfax and Prem Watsa and its rise over the decades, Prem made his reputation in large part, and a lot of money, calling market bubbles, right? These big turns in the market. He got the dot-com boom. He was early, but he was right. He got the U.S. housing crash, again, early, but he was right. So, of course, right now we've got artificial intelligence, as you know. It's looking pretty frothy. What do you think Prem's advice would be for all of us about a potential AI bubble that we may or may not be watching?
He hasn't, I could never speak for him first, so I'd only be guessing. But in the past, the company has never really chased a lot of the hotter tech sectors. And, they sort of stick to their value plays. So, it would be surprising to see him pounding the table about getting involved. But who knows? The economy is changing pretty fast.
If you think about corporate Canada right now and where Canada is in comparison to the rest of the world, there's this conversation about big Canadian companies, about Canadian IP, about Canada potentially needing national champions and more national champions. Not a lot of people think about Fairfax or even maybe even know Fairfax. Do you think it's odd that we have such a big company that's been so successful that isn't out there in some way, not necessarily wrapped itself in the flag, but just out front for parts of the economy?
I think Prem does he does his bits in speeches. He's been quite vocal, supporting corporate Canada, supporting Canada. He's got a commitment to the country, and he intends to keep the office in Toronto. I mean, this is a company that's started almost exclusively buying Canadian subsidiary assets of American companies, but Canadian. So most of their assets were in Canada in the early years. Since then, they're in well over 100 countries around the world, and very, very global. But they're still keeping their stock listing in Toronto and their head office in Toronto, and the plan is to keep it that way. So I think that's a big vote of confidence in Canada, and He would be sad to see any of that change, after he's gone. He said that.
Well, David, you've spent a long time over the last number of years thinking about Prem Watsa, writing about Fairfax and Prem Watsa. Will you take anything away from doing this, spending this kind of intense time that might change you or how you go about doing things?
I think it's definitely been a refreshing sort of reinforcement that you can build a company with a vision and be one of the good guys. I'm inspired by that. I didn't get any stock tips. Is that what you're looking for?
I was hopeful for hey, what's Prem up? Should I shorten video? What's going on? David, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and pleasure catching up.
My pleasure.
David Thomas is the author of the new book, The Fairfax Way: Inside Prem Watsa's Secret to Lasting Success. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show was produced this week by Daniel Nerman, Liz Withey, Leah Hendry, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock, who, it turns out, does indeed have a favorite critical mineral.
Yeah, germanium.
Why germanium?
Germanium transistors just sound better, Paul.
Okay, there you have it. Score one for germanium. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Thanks for listening.